They sent in all of the bad ones. They sent in some bad people. And that to me was just terrible. And they send in drugs. Every boat that we take out, we save 25,000 lives of Americans.
Y el gobierno de Estados Unidos lo sabe.
The U.S. government knows, because we've told many of their spokespeople, that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want oil, Venezuela is ready for U.S. investment, like with Chevron, whenever they want it, wherever they want it, and however they want it.
All right, let's bring in our panel. Chris Ryan, host of the New Hampshire Today with Chris Ryan on WGIR and iHeartRadio. Matt Terrell, the former chief of staff to then Senator Marco Rubio, and Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Chris, you saw that exchange right there. Maduro looks ready to negotiate. Do you think, though, still that the answer is going to be from this administration, you got to leave first?
I think that he's fondling Maduro, that is caught up to how this administration works. This is a peace through prosperity foreign doctrine. And whether it's with the Middle East, whether it's with Venezuela, at least they have a chance here. Maduro can see the writing on the wall. The United States is coming, is going to be engaged in efforts in order to depose him and install new leadership there. What that looks like still remains to be seen. But Maduro now understands how you play ball. It's taken him months to figure it out, but you don't go in opposition of this administration. You say, let's negotiate. Let's make a deal. How can we bring you prosperity the same way we've done in the Middle East and negotiated many of those different circumstances?
Susan, in that video where he's driving with his seatbelt on, he has the parameters of an agreement with the United States. Do you think this administration would go for something short of Maduro leaving the country?
Well, that remains to be seen. Right. Do you think he was actually driving?
I don't know.
Was the car moving?
It wasn't very safe. I mean, even with the seatbelt,
yeah,
probably not a good idea.
There was a guy in the back taking selfies, too. It was really one of the odder interviews I've seen with a foreign leader. But he sounds ready to make a deal. Donald Trump likes to think of himself as a deal maker. Whether this White House is willing to keep Maduro in power, I think that's something we don't know. And the answer to that, maybe you would know the answer, but I think the answer to that may be no.
Yeah.
They would not be willing to make a deal that leaves him in power.
Mm-hmm. And, Matt, you look at what's going on down there. There's been a massive military presence for some time. How long is that sustainable before something has to happen?
Well, I think it's very sustainable. Look, it's not as if President Trump is waging a full sustained campaign here. There'd be a multi-year war. This is something where it's targeted strikes. You're seeing financial pressure be put on Maduro. But really, what Maduro found out was what the Trump doctrine is all about, and that is mess around and find out. President Trump doesn't bluff. He puts a clear line there that you should not cross, that he doesn't want you to cross. Maduro crossed that line. He didn't come to the table and do what President Trump needed him to do. The bottom line is we'll see what happens next. Maduro needs an off-ramp. That's key here.
Chris, the president says the U.S. is locked and loaded if Iran kills protesters. That's a red line, no?
Yeah, and to Matt's point, the president, in engaging with Iran, has not messed around at all. And when he's drawn a red line, he has moved forward. In other circumstances, you could make an argument. But when it comes to Iran, he is serious. And his engagement with the supreme leader and with the Iranians in the past indicates that he is going to move forward here if the potential exists and needs to be met. The thing, though, is this is remarkable what is taking place in Iran, because for years we heard about if there's ever going to be any sort of regime change, the people needed to rise. They were interested in doing so. And there was just a remarkable image of an individual in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
There was police there, and it reminded me of Tiananmen Square. It was such a remarkable image. And that type of an image, like we saw in the Arab Spring, could unite the people of Iran to finally move on from the supreme leader.
Mm-hmm. Susan, I want to bring things back here to the United States. Later this month, Americans are going to be able to start filing their tax returns. And if you look at the law, they're probably going to get bigger tax returns. Do you think that's going to be enough to start to change perceptions of this economy?
The two things have proved to be true. The economy's been more resilient than most of us predicted, most economists predicted. But Americans are not feeling it. And Americans are not convinced that when you see those robust growth numbers from the third quarter, or you see the pretty stable job situation that is being reflected in their own lives. They see their healthcare costs going up. They worry about housing costs. You did a piece that talked about fears about what AI is going to mean to them in their lives. And so I don't know that at a time when 20 million Americans are seeing their health care costs spike this month because of the loss of the Obamacare subsidies, that their tax returns are going to convince them that everything is all right.
Matt, how do Republicans change that narrative, and how are Americans feeling better by the middle of next year?
By talking about the facts. The truth is the economy is strong right now. Yes, more work needs to be done, but inflation is down. You've seen gas prices down. All while you've seen wages up and the stock market up. Beyond that, you saw a better than expected GDP growth number. The bottom line is there's a PR war going on right now. There's a false narrative out there that the GOP needs to win, and they can do that by talking about the facts and also reminding the American people what President Trump and Republicans have done on affordability and strengthening the economy. President Trump and Republicans should be out there every day talking about those tax cuts that were passed under the One Big Beautiful Bill. Talk every day about what they're doing on deregulation, and talk every day what they're doing to bring affordability to Americans nationwide. That's the key. Talk about the record of success that President Trump has had, and healthcare is going to be the big fight. And President Trump has led on healthcare. Think about most favored nation policy. He just recently enacted billions of dollars to rural hospitals. The GOP is leading on affordability. The economy is strong. They just need to win the messaging war out there. That's key.
It's going to be one heck of a year, but let's look back to just this past week. Winners and losers. Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I love the Ole Miss story in the college football playoffs. Pete Golding was left basically trying to scramble to see who was going to be a part of the team, what coaches were going to be there, and they were down at the half, botched play at the end of the half, couldn't get off a field goal, and they end up beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. He is my winner of the week. Great job sticking with things and figuring it out and having success.
And your loser?
Loser of the week is the Supreme Leader. He is once again in a situation where he will not win, and now the people are rising against him.
Susan?
Winner of the week, Iowa Democrats, who held on to this in a special state Senate election, which prevented Republicans from having a supermajority that meant they would be able to override vetoes and take other actions. It's a pretty low bar to just avoid a supermajority on the other side, but it was an important one for Iowa Democrats. My loser is, if you put out a news dump on New Year's Eve, you're hoping no one notices what it is. So House Republicans apparently did not get what they hoped for in that long-awaited interview with Jack Smith, the special counsel.
Okay, Matt.
Winner of the week, look, I'm biased. I used to work for him, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio, look, what you saw President Trump do in Mar-a-Lago was really focusing on foreign policy. Obviously, domestic policy is going to be key here, but the world is watching what President Trump and Secretary Rubio have been doing. And you take a look at having Zelensky. You've seen, obviously, what's taking place between Russia and Ukraine. Secretary Rubio has really been leading the effort on that. He has right now, I like to call it the mega halo. That's something he has earned. And right now, those who are close to President Trump and doing a good job in the administration are going to have that mega halo. It's something the Secretary has earned, and we'll see what happens next.
Mm-hmm. And your loser?
Well, look, my loser is Governor Tim Walz. I mean, look, the truth is what happened with fraud in Minnesota has been taking place for quite some time. This is something that's going to be really a problem for the governor going in for re-election as governor. And ultimately, it's also a big loser for Vice President Harris. She's the person who's been trying to rebuild her brand. That's a challenge when the person you put on the ticket to be just a doorstep away from the presidency if needed. That's a real problem putting that person on the ticket for Vice President Harris. And then for the Democrat Party, Vice President Harris and Democrat Party is facing right now is a challenge with Governor Walz, who's had this fraud. It's a real problem for the party and for Governor Walz right now.
Well, bad news, panel. We don't have time for our losers of 2025, but you know what? That was last year anyway. Panel, thanks so much. Chris Ryan, Susan Page, Matt Terrell, much appreciated.